balancing work life with personal/family life, that is the $1 million question, and definitely a challenge for all of us. And I know with the experts, they tend to say, well, work-life balance doesn't really exist. And although that is true to some degree, that doesn't mean that we can't strive for some semblance of balance between the two. So today I'm going to talk a little bit more about what those challenges look like, some recent things that happened that made me aware of it, and some of the small action steps that we can take toward getting toward something closer to balance. My name is Gilda, and I'm the founder of the nonprofit Path, which is a personal development coaching practice designed to help my clients have less overwhelm and more balance in their lives. And I've also created a complimentary guide on how to focus on your priorities, one of the most in-demand subjects I was asked about. So if that is helpful, feel free to grab a complimentary copy for yourself in the link below. So in terms of challenges, I think the system is a bit rigged against us in the sense that, 8 to 10 hours of our day, our waking day, is dedicated to work, and we're all expected to use that time specifically for that. And what's left over is what we have to work with, and that can even bump heads with just time that we need to take care of our families, and then our own personal time as well, which is probably a whole nother topic. But in essence, that plus all the programming around us that tells us how critically important it is to be productive, to be successful. And that makes sense, and that's not something that we can all control by any means, but we're all not alone. This is just something that's part of how we grew up and what was expected of us. So I think what it really boils down to is looking at those that are closest to you in your relationships as far as the personal side of things go, in terms of sort of the most important part of that personal life, whoever that is, really kind of taking stock of the quality of those relationships, I think, is really key to making sure you have a very satisfying personal/family life. Interestingly enough, I just wanted to share that I had read an article about a judge that came across a lot of delinquent juvenile cases. And sadly, he said that, a lot of these parents just aren't home and aren't able to spend the time needed to really be there for their kids, and maybe they couldn't because they had to go to work to support the family. But he said if every parent or even this applies to every human, could just remember this one acronym, which is TALL, TALL, and just focus on satisfying that he would not have any delinquent juvenile cases across his court. So the T stands for time, the A stands for attention, the L stands for listening, and the second L stands for loving. And if you just to focus on just those 4 things, how much different would our society be, and the support that the kids would have. But I would just say, if you start to look at your relationships and different ways to, with the limited time that we have, really focus on improving them in some way. In the interim, every relationship is like a bank account, and there are constant deposits and withdrawals, coming in and going out at all different times. And the summation of those deposits and those withdrawals is what makes up the quality of your relationship. And in fact, there's a book I highly recommend called The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. And he just says that everyone speaks all 5 love languages. They are quality time, meaning face-to-face, 5 to 10 minutes of just full attention. Words of affirmation, so a compliment, a kind word lifts somebody up, versus a negative one, really takes somebody down. Gifts, which is not about the material item, but it's more about the thoughtfulness behind whatever that is. The fact that you're thinking of that person means a lot to them. Physical touch, so hugs, a nice pat on the back, etc. The last one being acts of service. So if you're helping out around the house, helping with chores, or just doing something kind for someone, that goes a long way. Versus not helping out at all and someone else is doing all the work, that's more of a negative withdrawal. So, this is just something to pay attention to. And even though, again, we may only have evenings and weekends to really dedicate to building those relationships, I think it's really critical that we do focus on the quality of those moments. And I think for at least me personally, I know it's like this pre-programming is so strong that I just need to do one more thing on my to-do list. It draws me and I get so sucked into it that I really lose perspective with what the long view is. And so just taking a couple steps back to say, am I going to be regretting this later, or down the line, what's really going to matter at the end of the day? And so just pausing and just getting yourself out of the work mode. And I think you really have to be very intentional about how you use your time and structure that, so that, hey, from 8:30 in the morning till 5 p.m., that's work time. As soon as I walk in the door, or if you're working from home, you close your home office or put a towel over your computer monitor or shut it down or whatever you need to do. Create that separation. And then hey, now from 6 p.m. on, after dinner is family time, and you're shutting off, you're not checking your work email, you're not checking the phone unless it's an absolute emergency, and setting those boundaries for that as well, I think is really, really important to do. So in regards to the 5 love languages, everyone has all 5, but the key is that each person has 1 to 2 primary love languages, and the secret to it all is speaking that primary love language to that particular individual. So, for example, if you have one family member whose love language is words of affirmation, that means giving compliments, sincere compliments, is going to help put a whole bunch of deposits in that relationship bank account. Versus the other person, maybe the sibling in that relationship, they speak a different one, acts of service. And you can say all the nice things in the world to that one, but if it's not one of their primary 1 or 2 love languages, it doesn't mean anything. And you have to do things for that person to make them feel that very loved. And usually most people don't speak the same 5 love languages. In the interim, I think it's important to use the reactions that you're getting from your closest family members and those you care about as a gauge as to how you're faring with those relationships. And believe me, I struggle with that because it's a constant juggling act, really, because sometimes you're spending too much time on work and you're neglecting the relationships, and boy, will they let you know. And this might look like an attitude from a teenage son or daughter. This could look like a cold shoulder from a spouse or a partner. And yes, it could just be that they're having a bad day. But if there's no apparent reason for that, it's usually because that relationship bank needs more deposits. There's too many withdrawals or not enough quote unquote relationship cash in that account to keep it going, be in a positive space. So that's really important to be aware of and use that as just information. Try not to take it personally. Just remember, it's information to help you invest in that relationship. And that's a whole nother thing. So sometimes we get so into the checking off the boxes of our to-dos that I think it takes a moment to step back and consider this. So when you are 80 years old and you're in your rocking chair and you're looking back on your life, what regrets will you have? What kind of relationships do you want to look back on with fond memories? And think about that, really, because sometimes we're just so kind of right here that it's really hard to get that perspective. But definitely fast forward and take a look at that. Just by doing that one action a day, that will help keep the deposits up. But another thing that we've had to do in our family is also, I call it like a boost. So yes, every day do the one thing, but on a weekly basis, do some kind of check-in. So that could be a date with your spouse. And then for kids, it could just be, a treat, an ice cream treat, something fun that's going to build your relationship together. But for each family member, doing some kind of weekly check-in that's longer than just the quick small action to keep that sort of going. If you're kind of not in a good place, there are things you need to do to reset that and kind of have open communication to talk about what those issues are, what the needs are. It's all individual. So if you need support or help with something like that, feel free to book a consult with me. I'm happy to help you with that as well. I think just keeping that in mind, and again, I think the biggest reframe, at least for me, is in looking at those relationships as an investment. And that's tough because sometimes, again, we get so into the grind that's really easy to get busy and just overlook stuff and be like, well, I'll get to that later. But life is short. You never know what's going to happen. So I think it's really critical to remind ourselves, yes, okay, I feel like I'm wasting my time because I'm not getting all these things done. But no, to just stop that thought and reframe it to, wait a second. Down the line when I'm 80, what's going to matter to me? And it's really going to be the relationships, and we all know it. It's hard to do when, again, we're all in this busyness in this moment. But I think when we reframe it to say, no, wait, this is an investment in this relationship, and look at it that way. And it's not something that you're going to see immediate results on. I was actually chatting with another parent who told me that they were challenged with their son, I think when he was about 15 years old, and he basically would come home from school every day, just like totally vent, and it was in a very negative way, that the wife, the mom, was so distraught that she would go away and not be around when her son came home from school just because it was so disturbing, and he'd like unload on her, but just in a very unhealthy way that just made her not want to be near him. And so they ended up going to therapy, and after the therapy, she started to just sit and listen to him. And that was tough. She had to learn that skill because a lot of times she just wanted to go and fix it. But he didn't want that. He just wanted to be heard. And so when she finally started to learn to just listen, and as tough as it was, she did that like every day. And it was not easy. Like sometimes she just wanted to curl up in a ball and, just not continue to do that, but she kept doing it. And the best part was that now I think he's in his early 20s, and they have the most beautiful relationship, according to the husband I was talking to, which was amazing. And he was saying, hey, I don't even have that relationship with my son, but she does because she invested the time in it. And so, look around in your neighborhood, in your community, or with other coworkers, and you'll see there's evidence of what do their relationships look like. Not that you're being nosy, but just kind of observe and kind of think about, what do you want with that relationship with that person? And the best news is there's still time. You can turn it around. It's never too late. So take this opportunity, really think about it, and maybe come up with your own brainstorm of what would be 10 things that I could do to improve the relationship. And again, for some new ideas on that, I've got a new list of 10 things you can do to improve any relationship. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.